While much of Europe went hungry and cities lay in ruins, Nazi elites feasted on stolen champagne, wrapped themselves in perfectly tailored uniforms, and cruised through occupied lands in polished Mercedes built by forced labor. It wasn't disorder, it was economics. The regime didn't simply invade countries, it monetized them. Behind every polished emblem, every pair of black boots, every shining badge of rank, there was profit. The Nazis turned design into doctrine, style into propaganda, and luxury into a symbol of divine legitimacy. It stands as one of history's darkest ironies, a movement preaching purity and sacrifice while drowning in excess, yet it was effective. The illusion of order, the beauty of control, became one of their greatest economic weapons. This was more than tyranny. It was a business model. It was a brand. To understand how deep that branding went, you have to go back to Germany in the early 1930s, a country broken, humiliated, and bankrupt. After the First World War, the Treaty of Versailles crushed the German economy. Hyperinflation wiped out savings. By 1923, a loaf of bread cost billions of marks. Middle-class families burned banknotes for warmth because firewood was cheaper. Then came the Great Depression. Unemployment soared, despair spread, and faith in democracy evaporated. That was the world Adolf Hitler walked into, not as a soldier, but as a salesman. He sold redemption. His product was power, wrapped in moral purity and national pride. But no one buys purity if it looks poor. So while Hitler preached discipline and sacrifice to the masses, his inner circle built an empire of spectacle, a parallel economy where beauty, luxury, and violence fed each other. The Weimar Republic had been chaotic, modern, and cosmopolitan. Berlin's cabarets, jazz, and avant-garde art symbolized freedom, but also decadence in Nazi eyes. Hitler promised to cleanse it all. He called modern art degenerate, yet obsessed over architecture, design, and uniform precision. He didn't just want to rule Germany, he wanted to choreograph it, and for that, he needed style. In 1933, the Nazi Party came to power and immediately fused politics with image management. Joseph Goebbels, head of the Ministry of Propaganda, understood that control of the mind started with control of the eye. Everything became aestheticized: rallies, parades, posters, films, even currency design. But the most powerful propaganda wasn't on paper, it was worn. Enter Hugo Boss, a small-town tailor from Metzingen who joined the Nazi Party early. His factory produced brown shirts for the SA, black uniforms for the SS, and field attire for the Wehrmacht. His sleek designs made soldiers look like a modern Roman legion, cold, unified, terrifyingly elegant. The style wasn't accidental. It was engineered to turn men into symbols. Those black uniforms weren't fashion, they were psychology stitched into fabric. Hitler's elite didn't just wear their ideology, they drove it. The Mercedes-Benz 770K, known as the Hitler limousine, became a global icon of technological dominance. It was massive, bulletproof, and customized to project invincibility. It wasn't transportation, it was theater on wheels. Even the idea of the Volkswagen, the People S-car, designed by Ferdinand Porsche, served propaganda. It was marketed as proof that the regime could deliver modern luxury to the working man. Of course, very few Germans ever received one. The funds were diverted to war production. The promise was a lie, but the dream was profitable. While these companies mass-produced loyalty, others refined it. The chemical conglomerate, IG Farben, manufactured synthetic rubber, fuel, and textiles, the literal fabric of Nazi modernity. They also produced Zyklon B, the gas used in extermination camps. That S, the seamless cruelty of the Nazi economy. The same supply chain that made tires for tanks made poison for people. Meanwhile, in occupied Paris, another kind of collaboration was unfolding, one wrapped in silk and perfume. As German officers marched through the streets, the city's haute couture houses reopened their doors. Paris had fallen, but the fashion industry adapted. The wives and mistresses of Nazi officials became the new clientele. The ateliers of Dior, Balenciaga, and Nina Ricci quietly flourished under occupation. Coco Chanel moved into the Ritz, a hotel requisitioned by the Germans, and began an affair with a Nazi intelligence officer, Hans Gunther von Dinklage. For Chanel, the war was a business opportunity. She used anti-Jewish laws to try to seize control of her perfume company from her Jewish business partners, the Wertheimer brothers. It didn't work, they had already moved their operations out of reach. But the attempt exposed a pattern. Moral lines blurred easily when survival and profit aligned. And that's the key to the Nazi luxury paradox. It wasn't hypocrisy. It was hierarchy. The regime preached simplicity to the masses, but rewarded loyalty with privilege. The higher you rose, the more ornate your life became. Hitler's bunker might have been Spartan, but his mountain retreat, the Berghof, was a temple of indulgence. Red marble fireplaces, panoramic windows imported from France, and furniture looted from Jewish estates. Hermann Göring built his estate. Carenhall with stolen art, gold, and antiques, a Versailles for a warlord. At the same time, The Ministry of Propaganda spun poverty as patriotism. Ordinary Germans were told to ration, recycle, and sacrifice for the fatherland, while the Nazi elite ate imported delicacies and smoked French cigars confiscated from deported families. Even luxury was nationalized. In occupied territories, German agents seized jewelry, art, and furs by the ton. These items were catalogued, stored, or redistributed among high-ranking officials. The so-called Einsatzstab-Reichsleiter Rosenberg, a special task force, looted over 600,000 works of art across Europe, from Rembrandts to Renoirs. It wasn't just theft, it was economic colonization. Luxury became a weapon of empire. For the Nazis, beauty wasn't decoration, it was domination. The immaculate uniform, the symmetrical architecture, the staged rallies, all of it built a visual language of inevitability. A perfect world built on perfectly ordered suffering. That's how you sell a lie, at scale. You make it look expensive. The Nazi regime understood something that modern marketing still runs on. Aesthetics create authority. They made fascism look fashionable, and the world bought it. The Third Reich didn't just build weapons, it built an aesthetic economy. Everything had a look, a sound, and a symbol. Hitler understood that power needed spectacle, and spectacle needed producers. So the regime outsourced its propaganda to the country's best artists, engineers, and industrialists. Leni Riefenstahl's films, like Triumph of the Will, turned rallies into religious rituals. Albert Speer's architecture, the stone cathedrals of fascism, turned politics into performance art. Even the Autobahn, that marvel of modern infrastructure, doubled as a stage for national glory. Cars didn't just move, they paraded. Every kilometer of concrete was a statement. Germany is back, and it's perfect. Behind that perfection was profit. The Nazi economy was a web of state contracts and private enrichment. Industrial giants like Krupp Siemens and Volkswagen didn't just survive the regime, they thrived on it. Forced labor camps supplied millions of unpaid workers, most of them prisoners, who were treated as disposable machinery. Mercedes-Benz built luxury cars for the elite and trucks for the army, both powered by slave labor from concentration camps. Hugo Boss's uniforms came from factories staffed with forced laborers, many of them women taken from occupied countries. IG Farben's profits surged during the war, not despite the Holocaust, but because of it. They ran factories next to death camps to extract maximum efficiency from human suffering. It was the industrialization of exploitation, capitalism without conscience. But the most profitable sector of Nazi luxury was theft. The regime didn't just pillage art and gold, it monetized identity itself. Through Arabization, Jewish businesses were confiscated and handed to loyal Nazis or restructured under German ownership. Banks froze Jewish accounts, insurers refused payouts, and the Ministry of Economics reallocated assets under new names. In occupied Paris, the process was systematic. Jewish families were forced to declare their possessions, every painting, diamond, and fur coat. Then officials cataloged, priced, and seized them. Warehouses in the 7th arrondissement overflowed with fine furniture, jewelry, and antiques. Trains shipped stolen luxury back to Germany, where it decorated the homes of Nazi officers. Paris became a shopping mall for the Third Reich. Meanwhile, French high society, adapted. The wives of German officers, shopped at Chanel and Schiaparelli cafes, reopened. Tailors adjusted their prices. The machine of elegance never stopped running, it just changed clients. Coco Chanel's story wasn't unique, it was symbolic. She moved into a suite at the Ritz Hotel, the same building where Gringa's staff operated, and resumed her socialite lifestyle as if Paris hadn't fallen. She collaborated with Nazi officials, courted wealth, and maneuvered to reclaim control of her perfume company from her Jewish business partners using new racial laws. When that failed, she stayed comfortable anyway. After the war, she reinvented herself as a survivor, because in fashion, image is everything. That's the deeper lesson. The Nazi luxury economy didn't corrupt capitalism, it revealed it. The line between collaboration and commerce was always negotiable. Most major companies didn't have to be coerced, they volunteered. IBM provided punchcard systems to help the regime catalog prisoners and track resources. Ford and General Motors supplied vehicles for the Wehrmacht, Standard Oil sent fuel. Chase Bank managed accounts for Nazi officials well into the war. Swiss banks laundered stolen gold and deposited it under false names. For all the ideological noise about nationalism, Nazi capitalism was thoroughly globalized. The same industrial networks that made the Reich run were intertwined with Western finance. Germany wasn't an isolated monster. It was plugged into the world economy, and the world looked away because the contracts were profitable. That's the true definition of moral inflation, when ethics lose value faster than currency. And yet, this luxury economy wasn't just about greed. It was about order. Hitler and his inner circle believed hierarchy was natural. They saw opulence not as sin, but as symbolism, the visible proof of destiny. To them, wealth was divine confirmation. They believed Germany was chosen, and therefore entitled to enjoy the spoils of the unchosen. Even Hitler's own possessions told that story. His mountain retreat, the Berghof, was filled with fine art, looted from Jewish collectors and museums across Europe. He curated his image as a man of culture, soft-spoken, disciplined, refined. That was the brand. The uniforms, the architecture, the cars, all of it sold the illusion of perfection to disguise the reality of horror. The Nazi elite were the original influencers of authoritarianism. They built a visual empire that didn't just dominate Europe, it seduced it. When the first foreign journalists visited Germany in the late 1930s, they marveled at its cleanliness, its efficiency, its modernity. They didn't see the slave labor camps hidden behind it. That was the genius of fascist marketing. Turn brutality into beauty, and call it rebirth. Even the concentration camps were part of this grotesque logic. They weren't just sites of murder. They were economic infrastructure. They produced bricks, uniforms, parts, and profit. Companies leased prisoners as if they were equipment. When one died, another was supplied. The ledger never paused, and in that way, the Nazi regime blurred the boundary between war and commerce. Every atrocity had a price tag. Every ideology had a market. The real business of fascism wasn't just oppression, it was monetized control. The regime mastered what modern dictatorships still practice today, the fusion of political authority and corporate complicity. The state dictated who lived and who labored, and private industry cashed the checks. When the war ended, the world was forced to confront, not just genocide, but accounting. The Nuremberg trials exposed the crimes of IG Farben and Krupa, but most of their executives served short sentences and returned to business after the war. IG Farben's divisions later became Bayer, BASF, and hoaxed companies that still exist today. Mercedes, BMW, Siemens, and Volkswagen all issued public apologies decades later, after generations of profit. The empire of Nazi luxury didn't die in 1945. It rebranded, and this is where the story stops being historical and starts being familiar. Because the deeper you look into the luxury economy of the 1930s and 1940s, the more it looks like the global economy we live in now, where corporations wrap exploitation in design, where image overrides reality, and where ethics are outsourced to the next quarterly report. After 1945, the world promised never again, but markets have short memories. The same companies that built the Nazi war machine rebuilt Europe's consumer dream. Mercedes sold freedom. Hugo Boss dressed executives instead of officers. Siemens powered homes instead of camps. Bayer sold aspirin instead of chemicals. History didn't erase the brands, it polished them. Luxury had survived fascism. Because luxury always survives. The story of Nazi opulence isn't just about uniforms and limousines. It's about the oldest truth in finance. Image redeems everything. If you can control how something looks, you can control how it's remembered. Today, that same logic rules global capitalism. We've traded armbands for logos, empires for supply chains, propaganda for advertising. But the machinery is the same. Cheap labor on one end, polished image on the other. The illusion of virtue packaged as lifestyle. The modern luxury industry runs on a quieter version of the same exchange. Sweatshops in Southeast Asia producing handbags sold as empowerment. Corporate greenwashing that sells sustainability while burning forests for profit. The system learned from history, not morally, but operationally. The Nazis proved how aesthetics could sanctify authority. Modern corporations perfected it. Now, power wears sneakers and posts hashtags. Authoritarian regimes still use luxury as political theater. Vladimir Putin's oligarchs float billion-dollar yachts through Monaco's harbors. Saudi princes buy London penthouses and Paris couture. China's party elite travel in motorcades of German cars while promising socialist discipline. The uniform has changed, but the psychology hasn't. Opulence has legitimacy. Consumption as control. Luxury has always been a political language. In Nazi Germany, it said we were chosen. Today, it says we've earned it. Both sentences justify inequality. And just like in the 1930s, the rest of the world plays along. During the war, American banks and companies stayed in business with the Reich long after they knew what was happening. Today, global brands stay in business with authoritarian regimes that censor, exploit, and surveil. The calculus hasn't changed, only the PR has. The idea that business is neutral is the oldest lie in the ledger. It's how wealth absolves itself. Financial history is full of these moral audits, moments when markets cash in on chaos. The difference now is scale. Global capital moves faster than any government can track. Image management is instantaneous. Accountability evaporates in the algorithm. The Reich used propaganda to shape perception. We do it with digital advertising, influencer marketing, and brand storytelling. We don't march for ideology anymore, we scroll for it. But the underlying equation is the same. Power needs a costume. In the 1930s, it was a black uniform. Today, it's a tailored suit or a tech hoodie. Either way, it signals authority, confidence, control. That's why the Nazi obsession with aesthetics still matters, because it revealed the blueprint. They understood that to make evil look good, you have to make it look expensive. The line between morality and marketing has always been razor thin. Hugo, Boss, Chanel, and BMW all rebranded after the war, distancing themselves from their past while leveraging the very prestige they built during it. And it worked. Nobody canceled them. Time and taste did what courts never could. They cleaned the narrative. That's the quiet power of image in capitalism. It outlasts justice. When we look at history's darkest chapters, we often focus on ideology, the speeches, the rallies, the war. But behind every dictatorship is a balance sheet. Behind every atrocity is a profit motive. And behind every symbol of power is a designer, a factory, a contract. The Nazi regime was not just a political nightmare. It was a business model. It monetized loyalty, aestheticized control, and turned propaganda into production. That model didn't die. It evolved. Because as long as money can buy innocence, power will always dress well. So what do we do with that knowledge? We learn to see through it. We stop confusing polish with progress, branding with virtue, luxury with legitimacy. Financial education isn't just about stocks and debt, it's about perception. Knowing when image is being used to sell you submission. When a luxury brand sells you empowerment, ask yourself, empowered for whom? When a corporation boasts about its heritage, consider whose stories were erased to create it. When wealth is displayed as glory, question who's paying for the spectacle. The Nazi elite wrapped themselves in silk while their citizens starved. Today's billionaires talk about saving the planet from the comfort of their private jets. The only thing that's evolved is the branding. History may not repeat, but marketing never forgets its lines. The Third Reich showed how power can disguise itself in elegance, and that illusion is what makes it so dangerous. Once you see that, wealth will never look the same again. If this shifted your perspective, subscribe. The past still holds the truth, and I'll help you find it.